It's time to get your morning started with the news you need to know.
News update.
This is what's trending with DJ and PK. Hashtag Utah Jazz.
As Filipowski catches, being guarded by Marcus Smart now, drives, powers him to the rack, and packed it on top of him. You may be the defensive player of the year once before, but I don't care. Kyle Filipowski with utter disrespect to Marcus Smart and a two-hand hammer. Call your guesses on where Starr's going, steals it, goes the other way, and packs it with the right hand. Williams retreats back out, sets up Juzang, the Jazz leading scorer right now with 21. He led UCLA to the Final Four. He's going back into his bag for a step-back three, and he hits. Johnny Juzang, how do you do?
Johnny's continuing to feel his way into his new role. You know, Johnny's put in a lot of work the last 2 years to become more of an off-ball catch-and-shoot player, which is not what he was before the NBA, so he deserves a lot of credit for that. He's continuing to make good reads, when to shoot his catch-and-shoot, and then when to play off a closeout. Changing your identity on the offensive side of the ball is really hard.
Johnny Juzang leading the Jazz with 27 points, 5 of 9 on the three-pointers and 5 of 6 on the two-pointers, attacking the closeout, as Coach Will Hardy says. And Filipowski went for 23 and 13, and yet, PK, the Jazz sad enough guys, they lost to the Wizards 125-122. I suspect you thought that was an excellent performance.
Yeah, I thought the best thing that I saw watching the game was Isaiah Collier going to the line 9 times, more than anybody in the entire game. Now, he didn't make enough of them. He was 5 of 9. He's got to be better than that. Like at least 6, if not 7 of 9, maybe 8. But, you know, as I look at these guys, Johnny Juzang in his new role, well, he only has the role because the team is tanking. So his new role, I mean, I understand Hardy's got to say something, and you've got about 10 to 15 minutes where he has to talk. It's required. So go on that. It's a fresh story, but I don't think Juzang is going to have a big role if the team is winning and making a playoff push. And
Johnny Juzang, starting two-guard.
Taking nothing away from him because he had a nice game. Yeah,
he did.
That three at the end. It's funny to me how guys, their percentage when they know they have to shoot just goes up so much. You know, he hit that three to put it in, and then at the end, Sensabaugh didn't really get off a shot.
So much of it is mental, so little of it is physical. The physical thing is the same, shooting the three, but the mental part, should I shoot, should I not shoot? You're all freed up by that.
Yeah, we saw it with George a couple games ago when they had, I don't even remember who it was, when they had to make that big comeback and all that. But yeah, I'm proud of the team that they go ahead and we're tanking, man, and we're no bones about it. You don't like it? Here's what you can think. And also like that Cody Williams was just way more physically aggressive, 33 minutes. Just his, what am I looking for? Not as more than body language. Mindset, I think is the right word I'm looking for. His mindset, to me, was as good as I've seen it so far this season.
It does help, of course, that they're playing the worst team in the league, and the worst team in the league was sitting its 2 leading scorers, so the bar is lowered. We'll see what these guys can do the rest of the trip. I suspect there's going to be a bunch of guys sitting a bunch of games on this trip, with the possible exception of Boston, where they can play everybody and probably get beat anyway. Like they got Philadelphia ahead on this trip, and Philly's not very good.
As long as Peyton Pritchard's walking through that door, Boston, yeah, they're pretty much unstoppable.
Peyton Pritchard is your go-to, huh?
Have you seen what he's done?
Yes, I have. Jazz are at Toronto tomorrow. That is next up for Utah. DJ and PK.
Hashtag NBA.
Peyton Pritchard's played 38 minutes. Stop and start. Goes to the left hand. Scores off the window, and it's a first career 40-point game for Peyton Pritchard.
Right wing Strus. 3. Too strong. Long rebound. Grabbed by Hunter. In the right corner to Garland. Lob left wing. Donovan. Hits 3. Bullseye! Cavs lead 106-105.
Nearly traveled. Sends it out front. Shea steals it. Down the lane to the rim for the dunk. Outstanding defense punctuated by a Shea swipe and slam.
Highlights from around the NBA. The aforementioned Peyton Pritchard, 43 points, 10 rebounds, 5 of 6, 10 of 16 behind that three-point line. Tatum was out. Pritchard stepped in, and he wasn't alone. Derek White went for 41. The Pritchard and White show carries the Celtics to a 128-118 win over the Portland Trail Blazers. And they're actually up by 20 going to the fourth quarter, and Portland made it look better in garbage time. So there you go. Peyton Pritchard, take note.
Oh, yeah, they were without three starters. I once asked somebody that I respect a great deal, and I don't want to say the name to embarrass him, because Pritchard played at Oregon back when the Utes were in the Pac-12 and we were following them. And I said, what do you think? Meaning his chances of the NBA. And lukewarm was the response I got back. Smaller dude, let's call it like it is, white. And Ainge, if you want some hope, Ainge takes him with the 26th pick of the 2020 draft. Like, Peyton Pritchard, taking him in the first round, a 6'1" white dude, blah, 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 blah. Well, so this means he's in his fifth year, and he's really, really come on. Averaging 14.5 points and 4 boards and 3.5 assists. I mean, he's not an all-star, but when the all-star's out, he goes for 43, and his role has just increased dramatically this season.
His playing time's doubled over the last couple of years, and his scoring's tripled. He's really – we always talk about the third year, and you really know after the third year, and he's a guy who's in his fifth year. And he's got a bigger role, so it's easier to make it happen. But these last 2 years, the role's increased.
So there's hope there. Ainge plucks him out of late in the first round.
And he was a 4-year college guy, right? Or was he 3?
I think he was 4.
4, yeah.
He might even have gone to – he's a local kid, I believe, if I remember, in Oregon. And he might have even started as a walk-on. I'm not sure about that. I certainly followed him when he was in Oregon, but that's several years ago.
You're to Donovan Mitchell 3 in that highlight montage because the Cleveland Cavaliers beat the Miami Heat 112-107. Cleveland still with the best record in the NBA, ever so slightly in front of Oklahoma City. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with the dunk there in that highlight montage as well. The Thunder beat the Grizzlies, so the top 2 teams in the league keep winning and keep pace. Important to the Jazz, the Charlotte Hornets. Hornets get beat. Minnesota handles them 125-110. So the second and third worst teams in the league lost. The worst team in the league, Washington, picked up a W. 12 wins now for Washington, 14 for Charlotte, and 15 for Utah, if you're keeping track of the race in Tankathon 2025. DJ and PK.
#NFL.
The first year off an Achilles is one of the hardest things to do. You've seen it happen with Kirk. Kirk had a down year. It happened with Aaron. I mean, he struggled, like you said, early on, but he got better as the season went. I think with all the doubt and all the negativity around Aaron Rodgers, he needs to retire, things like that, he's getting cut by the Jets. I think he's going to come back and have I know he's 42 or 41.
Are you going to say MVP?
No, I think he's going to have a big year this year, and I hope it's in our town.
Max Crosby wants Aaron Rodgers in Las Vegas. The Raiders make Crosby the highest paid non-quarterback with a 3-year, $106.5 million deal. Aaron Rodgers, 42, coming off an Achilles, and Max Crosby wants to roll the dice on him. Who will do it? I'm not sure anybody will. I think it's probably more likely than not, but it doesn't feel like a guarantee, though. Quarterback roulette. Who wants in? Who needs somebody?
Oh, I think he'll play in the NFL if he wants to next season.
Chargers have released edge rusher Joey Bosa after 9 seasons. The move frees up $25 million in cap space ahead of free agency. Bosa has said in the past he'd like to play with his brother Nick in San Francisco.
Well, he can't say in the future. I mean, it just doesn't work that way.
He didn't say it in the present either. It's not a comment from yesterday. Chargers now with a massive amount of money if Jim Harbaugh and the front office staff want to go make moves. The Seattle Seahawks opening up some room. They released 10-year vet Tyler Lockett, second most productive wide receiver in franchise history. They released 4 players on Tuesday, but they wanted a standalone day to celebrate Lockett as they waived him. DK Metcalf requested a trade out of Seattle not long after the news about Lockett. The 27-year-old reportedly prefers to be dealt to a contending team and hopes he has some kind of logic. Is this just to get a new contract, or does he really want to go?
When does a player ever hope to be traded to a losing team?
Some players will just be traded anywhere they can get their money. Denver Broncos have fired outside linebacker coach Michael Wickoit just over a week after he was arrested for allegedly punching a police officer at the Denver International Airport. Broncos head coach Sean Payton, we recognize the serious nature of the allegations against him and believe this is the best course of action at this time. Appreciate Michael's contributions to the Broncos and am confident he'll move forward in a positive direction. So he's out in Denver. DJ and PK.
#NHL.
Utah Hockey Club off last night. They're in Detroit to play the Red Wings. Contract extensions, more of them being announced. Karel Vejmelka in goal, 5-year deal worth $4.75 million per year. 5 years, $24 million. Also extended, Alex Kerfoot and defenseman Ian Cole both signed 1-year deals worth $3 million. The move's locking up more veterans before tomorrow's trade deadline, 3 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Mountain.
Yeah, and all these guys at one time or another said they really appreciate being here. So looks like they've got a potential for a good thing going. To what level? Well, we got to check back in 2 to 3 years. But they're not putting their ducks on the pond. They're putting them on the ice. And it looks like there's going to have a lot of stability.
They seem to improve about 10 points per year. If you track back in when they bottomed out in Phoenix, I think it was at 57 points, moving up through the 60s, 70s last year. Looks like they're going to finish somewhere in the 80s this year. Maybe with a strong finish, they do better than that. So keep it growing, keep it moving in a positive direction, and keep some of the familiar faces in there. Vejmelka's taken over that role as the number one goaltender this year, so he gets the biggest of the 3 deals. Red Wings tonight. Utah sitting on 63 points. Calgary and Vancouver now on 67. So they're 4 points back from the last playoff berth. Puck drops at 5 o'clock tonight. Pregame starts at 4 o'clock here on The Zone. That is what's trending, brought to you by Shamrock Plumbing. There's no job too big or too small. Get the personal touch with Shamrock Plumbing. Coming up, Cole Bagley, Utah Hockey Club insider, will join us at 9:30. Marcelo Balboa, MLS commentator for Apple TV, at 8 o'clock. Next, the question of the day. Stay with us.
And now, a look at traffic from the KSL Traffic Center.
We've got a crash at top of on-ramp from 2100 North in Lehigh to go I-15 northbound, and that is blocking the right lane and shoulder. We've also got a big pothole on northbound I-15 near 650 North in Clearfield that has caused tire issues for at least half a dozen vehicles, so use caution there. Advanced Window Products, factory direct, affordable windows. Call today. They're on their way. Financing is available. Save now, pay later. That's advancedwindows.com. With your KSL traffic update, I'm Christian Esparza here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
You know what's happened over the last month that's really important for the Jazz? Keontae's probably a full-time bench player for the rest of his career. He doesn't want that, I'm sure. He's been really good coming off the bench. And you can hide a lot of his deficiencies when he's going up against other second-unit players that are equally flawed. If you have a six-man who can score 30 and get everyone involved with some playmaking, he's really valuable. So you found the role for Keontae, and I suspect he's going to stay there for a while. And now what the nice thing is for the Jazz is they thought that was going to be Colin Sexton's role. Well, now you can trade Colin and get whatever you want for him. If you feel like Keontae at 21 years old is more valuable than Colin Sexton at 26 years old going into this summer with $18 million on his contract, because you control Keontae forever, and if he's a six-man, no one's going to pay him. Until you are putting them in the right positions to succeed, it's so hard to nail them down.
Hear Jake Scott and Ben Anderson every day from 10 to noon on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Number 1!
20 years and still going strong. Utah's #1 sports radio show for over 2 decades. You're listening to DJ and PK on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. And it's time for the question of the day. And what a question it is.
Oh, goody.
Noted college basketball analyst, goody. Noted college basketball analyst Seth Davis says BYU, quote, is legit Final Four good, closed, quote.
I fainted when I read that.
You on board?
That's some high praise right there.
That
man.
is very high praise. Now, you have noted a time or two before how broadcasters aren't the embittered, angry, disappointed, skeptical group.
Keep going.
That writers tend to be as they go through life.
You're getting warmer.
So as soon as I thought this, I'm like, man, I wish I'd seen this. Like, was he going, there's like 10 teams that can go to the Final Four? Does he think there's college basketball's wide open, there's 20 teams that could go to the Final Four?
That seems a lot.
I agree, and yet, nonetheless, if it's a happy talk segment and they're throwing out all these teams, I think 20 is a lot too. If he goes 20 deep, I get why he threw BYU out there. But in a year when Duke and Auburn look awesome,
right,
and in a year when BYU, admittedly not playing as well at that point in the season,
right,
but BYU got thrashed by Houston, who's certainly going to be a 2 seed. It's probably a 1. They're a 1 in my book. I think they'll end up being a 1, but they ain't falling lower than a 2. It's like, what Final Four berths are you taking away? How are you beating these teams? Maybe you get a break and they have a bad game or they have an injury, and okay. And if you're going 20 deep because of that, I get why you'd put BYU's name in there. But to me, this is a team that's fighting for a 5, 6, 7 seed, and those bids don't go, or those seeds don't typically go to Final Fours and aren't typically thought of as Final Four teams.
There's a few things around that.
Their mid-season turnaround?
They're not, right now, they're not playing as the seeds that you assign to them because they're going to take in A to Z.
Mm-hmm. And it was clearly a mid-season turnaround after mid-January. And they're a much better team than they were when they went 2-4 and lost to Houston and lost to Utah and lost to TCU.
And he's Davis, who went to Duke, which is, you go to Duke, you got to be a college basketball fan, right?
Clearly.
You got no choice.
Right. Yeah.
So, and obviously he's been writing about it at Sports Illustrated, and then he does the Inside College Basketball, blah, blah, blah. So in my mind, he has a lot of credibility because he's devoted a lot of time to following this very sport, right? So this has been basically the way he makes a living. And he's looking at it right now. And he's seeing that they go into Tucson, they go into Ames. I haven't been to Ames, but I've been to Tucson many times, and that's a tough, tough thing to do. And it doesn't matter, that call or not. Take away that call, and that call doesn't happen, and Saunders doesn't get the chance. All right, so they score 1 less point. That's still a heck of a effort.
Performance, you got to be a good team to hang in for 40 minutes and play like that.
Yeah. And they won great, and a controversial call, blah, blah, blah. Although I think it's overrated, the controversial call, because Saunders had to go and make the free throws. It's not like they gave him the 2 points simply because he got fouled. And we saw what he did the other night. So the guy's coming up big-time clutch. And there's a lot of sizzle around BYU. And they get attention. We've talked about this, how they're getting attention. A lot of it, not all of it by any stretch, but some of it, it's a player that they don't have. Now, there's a kid that is, for instance, Cameron Boozer. Right? He's going to Duke next year, but nobody's really talking about that because that's what they do.
He's an excellent prospect.
Right.
And he's got a ton of upside.
Yeah, I've seen him play on television several times.
And how many times has that been said about Duke recruits?
Yeah.
100 or 1,000
And
times.
rightly so.
Right. But BYU got a kid who's got a really unusual profile.
Yeah, they don't get those types of kids.
Number one kid, he's a Massachusetts kid. He ends up at a prep school in southern Utah, and he ends up committing to BYU over Duke.
And there's a kid at, he's playing some prep school somewhere. His name's Darren Peterson. and he's going to Kansas. Kansas is getting no run on Darren Peterson coming next year, but BYU is getting plenty of run on AJ coming next year. So there's that.
But stories tend to be the unusual, not the traditional.
And that's why if Seth Davis comes out and says, boy, I can really see Duke as a Final Four team, that's not news.
It's not. Everyone can see Duke as a Final Four team.
I mean, they're really, really good.
Everyone.
They're super young, but they're really, really good. And maybe that youth will bite him in the butt when we get to the tournament. But so far, it really hasn't. Oh, and, and he's not going to say that. He's not going to say Auburn. Tennessee lost last night, but they've been really good. So he's going to say BYU because they've never been in the Final Four, right? So there's a little bit of I'll go outside the box in making that statement, because if he says Duke is really Final Four legit, everybody just goes on to the next thing. But he says BYU, and if that happens, then he looks smart. And if it doesn't happen, nobody remembers.
This is a nice segment 2 weeks before the tournament.
Yeah. Now,
and they did. Didn't you put the photo up there? Someone put the photo up there of the graphic. I mean, this wasn't just an offhand comment in a conversation. They had a graphic built.
Right.
What they've done, recently, beating ranked teams, beating quad one teams, blah, blah,
and
blah.
it's all
and it's
there.
great. It's great. It's everything we've been talking about.
It deserves mention. It deserves consideration. It deserves attention.
But our listeners, in a unusual display of restraint, not only did not attack this from the rivalry sense, but came up with some rock-solid basketball reasons why even now, even with this improved play that's really impressive, there's a couple holes in the old game at BYU that could bite them in the butt and hurry in an NCAA tournament. We've certainly seen them bite other teams in other tournaments.
Oh, yeah.
David Clark,
Yeah.
less turnovers, better free throw shooting. Last night was way better. He clearly wrote this last night referring to the Iowa State game. More consistency, and maybe they could do the Final Four. Their 10-man rotation is pretty good. Torrey needs to show up. Drew, they average 12 turnovers a game, and they're 70% from the line. The defense is not good enough to make it into the Sweet 16. I hope I'm wrong, but I see them bounced in the second round. Although 2 weeks ago, they were first 4 and out.
Yeah, I actually thought the last couple of games, their defense has been a lot better.
100% co-sign that.
And then when you got 2K clogging up the middle and then showing the athleticism where he can chase a guy down, that looked like one of those things where you see in the warning track where you got some professional sprinter and they give some Yahoo from the stands a 40-yard head start.
And then Usain Bolt has the lead 3 steps later.
Yeah, we've seen those races.
Yeah.
And the way Keita tracked him down and blocked it, that literally could have been the best defensive play in BYU history. I mean, that was a phenomenal effort.
It was a great play.
And
did you not think of a LeBron chase down block when he does that?
To me, it seemed even better.
That's the chase down block that always comes to my mind. When someone says chase down block, that's the play I see.
Seemed like 2K came back from a longer distance.
Came out of nowhere.
Yeah. And they're with him clogging up the middle, and Denham is long, and he gets his hands on balls. Mm-hmm. There was one in front of BYU's bench that he got his hand on and was able to corral it before it got out of bounds. I mean, he's had, it's hard for him to live up to the hype because the hype was incredible.
Yep.
And he's had times, but then he does stupid things, and sometimes he's soft with the ball. I get all that. But he can do some stuff for you defensively just because being blessed with the size that he has. And Saunders is all sorts of athletic. And Hall reminds me of a Marcus Smart. Just tough. Super tough. Now, he showed athletic skill by going in on that alley-oop that Trey Stewart threw him, and that was awesome. And then I saw a thing yesterday. Somebody had him. We've seen this from time to time. White boy on a mission goes into an inner city or whatever it might be, and he's got his church mission and clothes on. He goes up and dunks it. And the brothers all go, "Ooh, I saw that," and that was funny. But he's all that didn't surprise me. But he's tough-minded. Stewart is a defensive specialist. So I would push back a little bit on that defense.
I think you should push back in the defense. I think that is one area where you can 100% see big-time improvement and game-changing stretches. And Caleb here says teams to get to the Final Four consistently make free throws, don't turn the ball over, and don't have stretches of 5+ minutes of not scoring.
Okay.
Says BYU doesn't consistently do that. I don't see it. And I totally get that because Caleb makes solid points there, and those stretches of not scoring for 5 minutes in the last 2 games, now you're kind of coming up with, oh, well, that's how they fell behind early against Duquesne and then never could pull it together. But their defense in the last 2 games, that they stayed in those games as abysmal as the offense was for 9 minutes at home against West Virginia and for 10 minutes at Iowa State.
It bought them time.
It did buy them time, and it was really impressive because you always quote the Steve Cleveland line, and Steve said it himself when he's on the air, when guys make shots, then they play harder. Nobody's making shots, and yet you're playing hard on defense. It really sticks out. Anytime a team can get to a point where they play point-a-minute defense for a 10-minute stretch of a game, that's a game-winning combo right there. I've seen you put that stretch together, and it's not just 5 guys defending because you're going to sub over 10 minutes. So you get 7 or 8 guys defending as a team, as a group for that long a stretch.
Yeah,
you're going to win a lot of games.
And the Iowa State was more impressive because it was on a road.
Sure.
And you don't have 17,000, 18,000 people to fire you up.
And so that, to me, even these last 2 games draws a contrast because they had a really good stretch here, winning 11 out of 13. I mean, that's great. But in that stretch, they won a game in the 90s at Arizona. And that's coin flip time. Do you make the last shot? Do you get the last call? Do you make the last free throw? And they did, so they won. But you don't want to be going through the NCAA tournament trying to get to the Final Four coin flip time. I mean, you might outclass the first team you play in the tournament where you're just way better than them. Right. You're way better than them. You win by 18, whatever. But by the time you get to the second round, and you can look at the Utes Final Four team, by the time you get to the second round, that's real competition. It's on. And the Utes' third game, they were sweating to the final shot.
Unless there's some big upset.
Right. Yeah.
What was that? Was it West Virginia?
Well, and the Utes, it looked like in their 4th game, I mean, they did have a blowout over Arizona.
Fourth game. Who was it?
Arizona in a regional final.
Oh, okay.
And that turned into a blowout.
And West Virginia was the one before.
Which was really
then Arkansas.
tight. And Arkansas was very competitive.
I can't even remember who they opened up against.
USF. And they outclassed them.
Yeah. It's been so long ago.
Yeah. But you're going to have to win these. You know what? You can't be going coin flip and coming down to the last shot and think you're going to the Final Four. And the free throws can bite them.
Playing.
The turnovers can bite them. The free throws can bite them. The stretches of not scoring for 5+ minutes can bite them. This has been a great stretch, but every coach will tell you they don't play the perfect game. And they can always put on the film and think, okay, what do we have to improve next? And that's 3 things that we know without a ton of coaching experience. These are 3 things that they need to put together. Now, having said that, when I saw you put this question up, I started thinking, okay, there are teams that routinely, the Kansas and the Dukes, they have tournament experience. BYU hasn't won. Can we expect them to win 4 games? So I looked at some of the recent teams from the West that we're familiar with that have gone to the Final Four. How much tournament experience did they have? Before
Gonzaga,
they did that.
A lot.
Gonzaga did have a lot. They've been Sweet 16 and Elite 8 in the 2 years prior. Yeah. But I looked at San Diego State, and I knew they'd had a couple Sweet 16 teams for their Final Four, but way before. The 2 years before, they went out in the first round. So is it possible for it all to come together?
Yeah, that's experience, though.
It is. You have tournament experience, and BYU has that. I mean, they played Pitt. I mean, they've seen the blue carpets and the drapes, and they know the routine with the press conferences. That's not good.
They played Pitt.
They played Duquesne.
Oh.
Out of Pittsburgh. If I misspoke, that's why.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have been there, and there's something to the aura of the NCAA tournament, and there's blue carpeting and blue drapes everywhere, and the press conference format is unusual, and they're familiar with all that. So they do have that. And if they keep improving, they've been improving dramatically. Not just 2 months ago after Utah, clearly they took a jump then, but the defense has taken a jump since that Arizona game.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is that it's just a familiarity, and Young has been masterful. He's been like the guy pulling the strings on the puppet because he's inserted some guys here and there that don't get time.
Yep.
And then those guys are ready. Trey Stewart, Boscovich,
yep.
Catchings. You never know
playing 10 or 11 guys.
Which guy is going to come through for you, or which? And Boscovich hit a big shot.
The one at the free throw line was huge.
Yeah.
That was a stretch in the game.
They were teetering, man.
They were teetering, and they were struggling to
taking
score.
on water.
Yep.
And he steps up confidently
and hits that little mid-range.
He's an older dude too.
Yep.
So it's funny. They get the older dudes, and it's usually the return missionary kids, not the kid from wherever the heck he's from.
Right. Other side of the world.
Yeah, but he's a little older. And so that gives you some hope there that they've been in these situations that they're not the same, but somewhat can equate. And Young has not been in it at all. But I think Kevin Young is just cocky enough to where that doesn't matter to him. And that's a great trait. When I use the word cocky, I don't.
That's a compliment.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not criticizing whatsoever.
The thing, and this is really hard to do because I think it goes back to what you say about the last-second shots in the last segment. There's a time where you just turn your brain off and just do what you do. And you don't worry about the past or the future really in the moment. And that's why guys hit these buzzer-beating shots that look so difficult. It's actually, in a way, it's easier. You don't have to think about it. I think Kevin Young has been good this year about the team isn't defined by what has been. And that is typically how we define teams. They weren't very good in early January, but that doesn't apply to late January and February. They weren't good defensively in early February, but that doesn't apply to late February and March. So how much of this baggage can they leave behind? I really think the belief the team has, and that can come and go pretty quickly, but right now they've got it in massive amounts. And I think we've seen in the last two games where they've been down early and missing shots, and it's easy to say it's not my night. And they come rolling back and not just make a run, which we've seen a million times, where, you're down 10 and you make a run and you tie it up, or you get within 2 and then you lose. I mean, they were down 9 and they went up 21. It's like, that's a phenomenal amount of belief. And they did wobble and they did waver.
Which I actually like. As you're a fan, you don't want that. You want that 20-point lead and there's 5 minutes to go and you're feeling great and you're no stress whatsoever. But especially on the road, to get down, to come back, to lead big, to squander the lead entirely, obviously, as it goes into multiple overtimes, and still find a way to gut it out.
And maybe they'll be in a game I don't expect them to win in the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, and that experience will pay off.
It's going to have to be, because they're most likely going to face a team that is seeded significantly higher, not just one or two. Because obviously the more you advance, the more that opportunities arise that you're going to be a lower seed playing a much higher seed. But they're going to be one of these teams, and you'll see it when we get to that point, that the belief in them advancing is going to exceed their number of seed, whatever it might be, because you can't ignore they got smoked by Providence, who stinks. They're not a good team.
Right.
Record-wise, and that was an awful game. Houston, what I would love to see is somehow next week in KC that they play Houston.
Well, they could. If they're the 4 seed and Houston's the 1 and everything holds, they could meet in a semi. And if you're the 4 seed, you only have to win 1 game. Now, you probably have to beat Iowa State in that 1 game.
Well, that's the cool thing about it.
Trusting Houston to beat the 8 seed.
Oh, yeah, they will.
Right, because they'll be playing a 10-10 team.
That's what's really cool, is that you have a tough game right off the bat. You've got that seed, and that's great. But when the ball goes up in the air, it doesn't mean anything, because you're most likely going to play a really good team. And that's what's super cool about this conference. In the quarters, you're going to need to ball out. But I would love to see, because they've played everybody else in that nucleus of good teams in the conference, and they've had success against them. Arizona, Iowa State, Kansas, right?
Kansas
maybe
kind of slipped.
Maybe Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a really good team, too.
They are.
So they haven't played them during this stretch. And then see if they got to Houston, that would be an instant, okay, how much better are you? Houston's Houston.
Yep.
And they've been Houston.
But they couldn't
They've been in Houston the last 2 years.
Right. They could not remotely compete with Houston the first time they played them.
Which was there.
And it was there, and we know they've made a lot of
Oh, they're dramatically different.
Right. BYU's made a lot of progress since then. How much progress
I would like
could be
to see
on full display in the semifinal?
Yeah. Even if they didn't win the game, if they played them tough, that would be all right, man. You are a team to be reckoned with, and at least if they, don't go to the Final Four, which I would certainly bet against, that if you have a run that you haven't had as a program since Jimmer, that would provide tons of momentum. Kevin Young says it's not hypothetical that we send in guys to the NBA, even though he hasn't sent anybody to the NBA because you can't right now. That you want a dose of credibility, you would get it in the most. If they go Sweet 16 and say they get to that game and it's a close game and you're playing a nationally prominent team and you lose at the end, okay. But then, man, the ammunition that he has combined with you won't outbid us.
That's nice. That's a good recipe right there.
It really is.
Yeah.
And you're already getting guys. And if AJ, it's really, really important that AJ kick butt next year. And if he kicks butt next year,
then that whole recipe.
Look at guys. Look what we've done. I mean, I don't even have to say it anymore.
No. Then
it speaks for itself.
Well, everything.
You'll get paid. You'll pay in front of 17,000, 18,000 people. You're in a great conference. Oh, my gosh. The door flings wide open.
All the promise that led to all the hype in that press conference, media availability, big TV screens on the floor of the Marriott Center, stadium seating, TV lights. I don't want to call it a press conference. It was a much bigger production than that. But it will all been borne out. All the promise that was hinted at in that hour would be borne out if what you say happens in another year.
Yeah, and they'll be practicing at the Young practice facility.
Yeah, nice. KYU.
Before we break real quick, I had a wonderful caller call in on who 2K's block reminded him of. And it was not LeBron. Any guesses?
Well, there have been other chase down blocks in the history of basketball. So now we have to figure out.
A pretty important one.
We'll get to that next.
All right, we'll get to that next. Think of your favorite chase down blocks. DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone.
And now, a look at traffic from the KSL Traffic Center.
Got a new crash on eastbound I-80 approaching the I-215 West Belt. A couple semi-trucks involved on the right shoulder, and snow continues to impact the higher elevations, with Little Cottonwood Canyon still closed until further notice. This update is brought to you by Whipple Service Champions, your cooling, heating, plumbing, drains, and electrical specialists. Whipple that away with Whipple Service Champions. With your KSL traffic update, I'm Christian Esparza here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Accessing.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
Logan Cooley kind enough to join us last year. You guys were kind of on the cusp of the playoffs, and then the news started to break. Will you or won't you move? What's going on? And you could tell that may have been a bit of a distraction in the locker room. Having all of that settled and just focusing on hockey, going out there in front of a great fan base, knowing where you're settled in at, how much has that helped keep this team focused this year?
I think the main part, like you said, is just the fans, the support we've had all season. For me, I think every game has been sold out, if not, close to being sold out. So it's been awesome this year. I've loved living here, loved everything about it, and to just be able to focus on hockey, focus on the team, and kind of what we need to do to just focus on winning and, trying to get into the playoffs. So it's been unbelievable. It's been an awesome year, and, obviously making the playoffs would just top it off.
Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. The guys you know and trust, talking about the teams you can't live without. This is DJ and PK on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
The band of the day is Led Zeppelin. It's brought to you by Live Nation. On this day in 1971, the group performed in Dublin, Ireland for the first time ever and played Stairway to Heaven live for only the second time. For all the live concerts and events in 2025, check out livenation.com.
Was that some kind of big song or something?
Stairway to Heaven?
Yeah.
Some kind of big song?
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
So I guess they played it in the garage once or in the studio once. Yeah, we like it. It's a new song. We'll play it. We'll just give it a shot. What the heck?
I'll have to listen to it.
Yeah, okay. All right, going into the break, we had a caller, all inspired by Keba Keita, or as you like to call him,
2K.
With his chase down block at Iowa State, every play critical because obviously that game went to double overtime, so they needed every play they got to win that game. And we were talking chase down blocks, and I referenced LeBron because he had a chase down block in the NBA Finals. I think most basketball fans can remember. So, Chicho, you got a call.
I believe his name was James.
Uh-huh.
I might have already spaced it. Going back 10 years ago, Gordon Hayward had a chase down block on LeBron James here in Salt Lake City.
Oh,
I
there you
remember
go.
that.
I do remember
the highlight on
it.
YouTube. It's pretty sweet. Unfortunately, the call's not great. Otherwise, I would have played it.
And so then I think they just announced it. They're going to cancel it or something around the horn or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was on PTI. But this Kevin Blackistone guy,
he's been on around the horn.
Didn't think it was that big of a deal because then there was another play. Maybe that wasn't the play. There was another play where he blocked 2 shots, and it was against smaller guys.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Wolves against smaller guys." And I thought, "Oh, come on, dude. There's something there, and you don't want to say it." And I knew exactly why he didn't want to say it because it gets dicey. But block shots if the guy's bigger, so that means Mark Eaton never had a shot that block shot that was legit.
No, Kareem's blocks don't count. Hakeem's blocks don't count. We're just gonna.
Yeah.
Sorry, Giannis, you're just too tall and athletic. I'm not gonna be impressed by anything ever.
Yeah. And so Keita's doesn't count because I don't remember who it was against, but it probably was smaller.
Probably against a smaller
because
guy.
he chases him down, which means he's a front court player, not a back court player, and that doesn't count. That's ridiculous.
The cool thing about Keita's block, I mean, yes, the actual block in the moment, but like the last 2 steps, you got a chance to get it. The thing about Keita is when you rewatch the play, you see him decide like a little short of midcourt, I'm sprinting. I mean, at that point, I don't think he knows if he's going to get there or not, but it's worth a try. Now, when you get close, you got a chance and you know what you can do. But to decide to run when you're 40 or 50 feet away, a lot of players, they'd run, they'd jog, but they wouldn't try to find the extra gear.
He had max effort.
Yeah.
And he understands if I want to play, this is my value. I'm not posting up on anybody. They're not ISOing me on the low post.
You want to score, go get an offensive rebound, block a shot. If you want to stay on the court, you got to defend and rebound.
And he was just as important as anybody else was to that win because of what he provided and what he's capable of doing. And it was sensational. And just the effort, the max effort. That's why I'm a sports fan, because I want to see max effort. And you can't see that every night in the NBA because they just play too many freaking games. And it's impossible for those guys. They can give 100%, but 100% one night, and then if you have to get on a plane and travel and you get in at 3 in the morning, 100% the next night may not be the same thing. They may both be 100%, but they're not the same because he just doesn't have as much juice to him because his body clock is all screwed up. He doesn't even know what city he's in. And you don't really have that in college. It's spaced out enough to where you could go every game, just be all out, and he did that, and that was such an awesome play.
Can you imagine if the NBA got to the point where they were playing 2 games a week? Because right now they're playing 3 or 4 games a week.
Right.
I mean, it's not going to happen. They're going to play their 82 games and make their money. They're not giving up the games. But what would an NBA game look like if they were only playing twice a week?
Well, it would look like the NBA playoffs.
Where they still play 3 times a week.
But they're not traveling all over the world.
No, the travel gets cut down. And actually in the first round, they do have – it's a long way between games in the first round.
Yeah, but everybody's on the same body clock schedule if you choose. If you choose to go out and party and blah, 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 stay up all night, that's up to you. But there's no reason why you can't be getting to bed at the same time that everybody else is.
DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Marcelo Balboa, 3-time World Cup participant. Marcelo Balboa will join us next, see what he thinks of RSL's offseason and how they stack up this year and look ahead to this weekend's game with San Diego. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone.